Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are decoding what is honestly a massive and sometimes really complex funding landscape. We're going to help your organization strategically target the absolute perfect grant. Let's get right into it.
So I want to kick things off with a number that should instantly grab your attention: $90 billion. U.S. foundations gave away over $90 billion in just one single year. I mean, let that sink in for a second. The funding is absolutely out there, and it's actively being distributed. But here's the catch, right? You have to know exactly where to look to get your share. You can't just put your hand out and hope for the best. You've got to understand the specific channels this money actually flows through.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, grant funding fundamentals. Second, federal and state grants. Third, local government grants. Fourth, private foundation grants. Fifth, community foundation grants. And finally, number 6, how distribution works.
All right, Section 1, Grant Funding Fundamentals. What is a grant?
Well, the fundamental rule is this. Unlike a loan, which, requires you to pay the money back, usually with interest, a grant does not require repayment. Once you win it, it's yours to use. But actually, scratch that. There are strings. Just different ones. Because unlike a standard donation, which is usually relationship-based and pretty unrestricted in how you can spend it, grants are incredibly structured. They're strictly application-based, and the funds are typically restricted to very specific uses that the funder outlines. You literally have to prove you can follow their rules to the letter.
Moving right along to Section 2, Federal and State Grants, the highest tiers.
So the really crucial point here is this. While federal grants are famous for giving millions of dollars to single organizations, they're also notorious for something else. They reject over 90% of applicants. Yeah, you heard that right, 90%. Because the payouts are just so massive, everyone and their mother applies, making them insanely competitive. If you're going after federal money, you need a highly polished, professional application, plus the actual infrastructure to manage a huge influx of highly restricted government funds.
And this basically creates a strategic taxonomy for your organization. You see, there's a direct relationship between the government tier, the competition level, and the payout size. As you move down from those massive federal pools, which again have very high competition, to the state level, well, the payouts are still large, but the competition drops a bit. Then at the local level, payouts are modest, but your chances of actually winning, they skyrocket, because the competition is incredibly low. So this is a game of strategy. It's not just blindly chasing the biggest dollar amount.
Which brings us to Section 3, Local Government Grants, the hidden gems. Now, there is a huge psychological trap here. Local funding is often the exact grant that nobody applies for. Why is that? Well, it's because beginners are too busy looking up at the federal level, dreaming of those multi-million-dollar payouts, right? They completely ignore the city or county grants sitting right in their own backyard. By simply shifting your focus locally, you position yourself in a much smaller applicant pool for money that's specifically earmarked to improve your immediate community. It's a total game changer.
Next up, Section 4, Private Foundation Grants, Specialized Focus.
Remember that $90 billion figure from our hook at the very beginning of this explainer? Well, that is the private foundation pool. We're talking about family endowments or corporate foundations that have a massive pool of wealth, but a highly specialized focus. They don't just hand out money to anyone doing good work. They give money to organizations that perfectly align with their incredibly specific, unique mission. So whether that's saving one specific species of bird or funding arts education in a very particular zip code, if your nonprofit aligns with their niche, that $90 billion pool is totally right for the taking.
All right, Section 5, Community Foundation Grants, Friendly Neighbors.
Now, community foundations exist specifically to pool local resources and uplift a specific geographic area. And because their main goal is community uplift, they actually act as local mentors rather than gatekeepers. They are for sure the most approachable funders out there. Honestly, in many cases, if they believe in your mission, the program officers will literally sit down and help guide you through the entire application process just to ensure you get the funding you need. It's really a partnership, not some tricky test you have to pass.
And finally, Section 6, how distribution works, under the hood.
Okay, this is a crucial distinction that most people totally miss. When you hear the word grant, you're probably picturing a competitive grant, right? Where applicants are fighting tooth and nail against each other for a limited pool of funding, and only the best proposals win. But the absolute secret weapon in the funding world is the formula grant, where funds distribute automatically based on a strict set of criteria rather than a competitive proposal.
Let's define this super clearly. Because a formula grant is essentially free money on autopilot. If a funder releases a formula grant, say it's based on the population size of the community you serve, or maybe the exact number of meals you deliver, some of these grants pay you automatically as long as you meet those baseline metrics. There is zero competitive application process. No way! You just prove you meet the formula, and bam, the funds are distributed. Really understanding this can save your organization literally hundreds of hours of proposal writing.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. Everything from those highly competitive 90% rejection federal grants all the way down to those approachable community foundations and even automatic formula grants. So, to wrap up this explainer and get your strategic wheels turning, I want to leave you with this absolutely vital question to answer with your team today. Which type of grant is your organization going after first? Seriously, don't try to chase them all at once. Pick your target, align your mission, and go get that funding. Thanks for learning with us today.